conversation. This is not going to be a very structured webinar with presentations and PowerPoint and the ideas that has already been set in. Here, simply conversation. My role will be a very structured. These young people webinar about their dreams and aspirations and challenges and frustration and all of that, and how do they envision the world. So in this series, I have these four wonderful people as a young blood coming in the field of education. I would first start with Krishank Malik, who represents the Arya Global Group of Institutions. They have Arya Gurukul School as a K-12 school in Kalyan. And also they started in kindergarten, the playgroup school. They also have a St. Mary's School, which is a low-cost private school and has been consistently being ranked in Education World ranking of budget private schools in top 3. And he has brought a couple of new ideas to the institution and practice, which we will get to know. Then we have Harsh Madhok. Harsh is also represents the Sunbeam Educational Group, which is in Varanasi, and they have, I think, now more than 23 branches in the what we call Purvanchal area of Uttar Pradesh, which is east part of Uttar Pradesh. And he is the Director Development and Operations in Sunbeam. And he, after, let's say, graduating in Australia and completing his higher studies, once again, he also could do, multiple things, but I would love to know his ideas and aspiration and what brought him to the field of education itself. Similarly, Roshan Gandhi also, he represents City Montessori School, a school which was started with only 5 kids, grew up to have 60,000 in an academic year, 60,000 students enrollment, and it made to the Guinness Book of World Record. And so such an esteemed organization, how Roshan decided to engage himself in educational activities, and that too when he himself studied in Oxford and University College London, got great degrees, and I'm sure that there was a kind of much exciting, I'm not saying this is not an exciting career, but there was a multiple option. So therefore, I would also love to know and understand Roshan, what motivates Roshan to come in the field of education and practice. And then we have what I call the outlier Bharati, and why she is going to play a unique role here in this webinar is she does not run just one school, but offers consultancy. She's so more like me, who is kind of meeting and visiting multiple schools and trying to understand one practice from the another, and can create a great mixture with her strategic ideas, her exposure, her communication activities that she has done for multiple schools. So guys, all of you, welcome to NISAtalk, our first initiative. And I'm sure in this process that we are starting, even we will make mistakes and multiple mistakes, but we are fine with that as long as we continue to strive towards making things better and better. So guys, welcome to all of you. And we start this conversation, what I'll call a simple free-flowing thought flow. Let me start with the first question, and any one of you can decide to answer first and go in whatever order that you feel like. And my first question will be, I would love to take you guys back to your school days. So think about your own school days, and what were those things that you either hated the most or loved the most? What kept you inside the school? And so let's start our journey for our own individual experience of getting into school, then coming into like the another side of the table where you are the part of in charge of getting things done. So who would like to start?
I can start.
Done.
Okay. So I think I would definitely say that, I went to the JB Pettit High School for Girls, which is in the #1 girls school in ICSE girls school in Mumbai. And while it was an excellent school and we, I mean, the curriculum was very good. I think there was a very large part of social and emotional learning that was missing from the entire curriculum and pedagogy. And, that's why I'm super excited, like you said, to have this free flowing conversation, right? Because it's even in a classroom, it's very difficult for kids to be creative or to think out of the box if they're in a very rigid and strict setting. So I think that was a very big lacuna in the education system, especially, and I'm just going to tie this in with a little bit with what's happening today. Like, so, especially with, this new education policy coming out with so many, prescriptions, I think this one area of social and emotional learning has definitely been kind of overlooked. And, we are now on the cusp of the, automation, technology, fourth industrial revolution, all of that good stuff. And, and there's a big gap between what I was learning in school and what kids are learning in school today, and the skills that they're going to need to, have to succeed in the future. So, I think
which one of many things happening in your school you loved the most? What part of it? Was that friend? Was that the teacher? Was that the sports class or drawing competition or the canteen or the friend or whatever? What part of education you enjoyed the most?
Yeah, I would say definitely peer learning, learning from friends. All of that was the more positive side, the social interaction, the collaboration. All of those things were the better parts of the education system that I went through. But like I said, I think there's a lot that needs to change in what's happening.
We'll come to the change. Yeah. And what part you hated the most? You kind of disliked,
Yeah, I absolutely disliked the top-down approach, of kind of the teacher being the sage on the stage and not kind of involving the children or the students in, eliciting and participating in what they're learning. And also a lot of the learning was not relevant or not like something that was really important to us in personally. So all of those things I think were missing in the
Wonderful.
education.
Next, who wants to talk the next?
Yeah, I could
yes,
say
Roshan.
something now, yeah?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I might be the outlier here because my schooling was all in the UK. So I was born and raised in the UK, and I did my schooling mostly in the city of Cambridge. And I had an excellent experience, I feel. I really enjoyed my time at school. Definitely a lot of things which I picked up there, which are relevant learning to bring back to India. But also a lot of things which I feel the system there can learn from India. I think India has the ethic around education, the kind of sacrifice that people make for the sake of a good education, the willingness to put in loads of hours of hard graft, of hard work. That's something which, the West can actually learn from the Indian education system. But yes, of course, there are a huge number of things which our system in the West can teach India's education system too. I think personally, I enjoyed the freedom and flexibility that I had to participate in a wide range of activities. I used to love doing music. I learned several instruments, participated in several orchestras and choirs and that kind of thing. And also I loved the freedom to question. I think, in a lot of subjects, it wasn't about having right or wrong answers. It was about understanding concepts and forming one's own personal opinions, really kind of developing analytical skills. So that was an opportunity that I really enjoyed having.
And what part you didn't enjoy?
Well, I have to say, I really liked most of my time. I can't think of many strong negatives.
Okay, wonderful. Who's the next? Krish, Harsh. Yes, Harsh. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay. So I was fortunate enough to have the experience of both an ICSE board and an American board. So I went to an ICSE school till class 8. And after that, I went to an American school Woodstock School with Missouri, and it's associated with the Middle States Association. So I was fortunate enough to have an experience of both the Indian way of studying and the American way of studying also. So it was a very good mix, and I could, as Roshan said, I could compare and contrast some of the things which were different in both the systems. And I really enjoyed my time in both my schools which I went to. Obviously, when I went to the American school, there was a lot more emphasis on progressive learning, such as use of a lot of project-based work and collaborative work, and a lot of feeling your expression, expressing yourself. Whereas when I went to during my time in the Indian school, things were a lot more like structured, and you had to follow what the teacher had to say. It's a certain unspoken thing that you can't question the teacher, which was obviously not there as much in the American system of learning. So it was good to get a good mix of both the both the learnings, I think.
Great. Krishank, you need to unmute yourself.
So yeah, I did my schooling in like 3 parts. So I started with Singhania, Srimati Sulochana Devi Singhania High School in Thane. Again, one of the top ranking ICSE schools in India. Then I went ahead and I was in Chinmay International Residential School from Coimbatore. Again, top 3 residential school in the country. And then I came back to Thane and I was in Vasant Vihar for my 11th, 12th. So I had like a whole progression in 3 parts from ICSE, CBSE, and even state board. So I've had the experience of all the 3 boards and from these schools. So I think I'll begin with what I didn't like about school. Period. Everywhere, I didn't like that we didn't have many forms of expression. It was only writing. That was the only way you could explain or absolutely. I don't really write anymore. I type. So stuff like that was something I didn't really like at all. I mean, we could have had many multiple ways of expressing. And we could talk, right? People didn't allow us to talk ever. Keep quiet, keep quiet, keep quiet. Anyway, that's what I didn't like about school. And I liked about all the school probably was 5-day week. 5-day week is essential for a child's growth. That was something I loved about my school in Singhania. What we're doing to kids now as a 6-day week school is absolutely criminal. So yeah, these are the 2-3 things which I would like say I like and I didn't like.
Great. Let me start with you only, Krishank, because this is one thing that I wish to understand, which continuously I question for myself. Is, let's say you had roughly 20 years of education. So let's say 12 years of like 10 plus 2 and then graduation and all of that. Yeah. During this roughly 20 years, you got to learn many things. You had to cram like the history, geography, maths, science, moral science, whatever, whatnot. Everything that was taught to you in this entire period, what portion of you think you are using the most? Like there is a management principle of 80-20, right? The 20% of things that you learn, which is giving you 80% of the outcome in your day-to-day life.
So let me put it this way.
20%
most of my
of
adults, most of my school life was technically corporate espionage because my parents were in schools. So I learned more admin in schools while I was in school than most of my adults than I actually learned school life in terms of corporate espionage subject to my parents were in school. So yeah, I learned more admin in schools while I was in school. Most of my adults than I actually learned school life in terms of corporate espionage subject to my parents were in school. So I think I learned more admin in schools while I was in school. Most of my adults than I actually learned school life in corporate espionage subject to my parents were in school. So I think I learned more admin in schools while I was in school. Most of my adults than I actually learned corporate espionage subject to my parents were in school.
Anyone else wants to
I
comment
think
on this?
I learned more admin in schools while I was in school. Most of my adults than I actually learned
Anyone else wants to
so I
comment
think
on this?
I learned more admin in schools while I was in school. Most of my adults than I actually learned
Anyone else wants to
so I
comment
think
on this?
I learned more admin in schools while I was in school. Most of my adults than I actually learned
Anyone else wants to
so I
takeaway, but what I envision is that schools do it in a more organized way and they actually plan for these skills to be developed in students. And in terms of critical thinking, I think learning at home, the supplementary education you get from your family and your parents, to think critically, for me, that happened at home. It did not happen in school at all. I mean, my dad's a journalist also. So obviously, I've lots of questions, always question what you're being told. But I felt that was missing in our education system, the critical thinking.
Yeah, certainly. So it's all about being, become a lifelong learner and keep learning. And therefore, the process of learning, the process of inquiry, to get to understand the concept and fundamentals and application and all of that. And therefore, because Bharati, that time you actually already had started talking about your vision of education and all of that. So let's start the conversation on this. So when you set up, during the introduction, okay, forget it. So Bharati, so your idea and understanding and vision for the kind of education that you are working for. So if you talk a little bit on that too.
Like what do I want education to look like?
Yes.
In the country?
In the country, in the world, maybe in Mars, if it is possible, wherever. Yeah. But how should it look like?
I know I'm talking about this a lot, but I think like the new education policy is great and there's been so much comment on it, but it has not talked about SEL, which is a very, very big thing in the education space. All the futurists are talking about that SEL is not a nice to have, it's a must have, and it's an economic imperative for people to prosper in the fourth industrial revolution, because everything is going to, more and more things are being run with artificial intelligence, machine learning. So the skills that we human beings are going to bring to the table are the skills I described earlier: the EQ, the empathic skills, the being able to read facial expressions, sharing, caring, conflict resolution. So I think the NEP has not given enough importance to this, and we need to think about how can we create these social, emotional, and creative intelligences in the classroom. What are the types of opportunities that are required to be provided for children to develop these attributes? And the policy keeps talking about creativity, and Modi spoke about innovation in yesterday's speech, but where will this creativity come from? And creativity only manifests in environments where children are without fear, where they feel loved, they feel free to be themselves. Like the environment you've created for us today in this webinar is so different from the other webinars that normally happen, right? So even in the book, I don't know if you all have heard of this book, it's called Flow. So the author basically says that if a person is constantly worried about how others perceive him, like teachers or parents or standardized test results, a person cannot really think originally or innovatively. So we have made our children constantly wanting to seek external validation, and they're doomed to have low self-worth. So someone with low self-worth cannot be emotionally connected enough to think and create innovatively. And this is very important in the foundational years. So we've talked about FLN, but we haven't talked about this, which is something I wanted to talk about today.
Surely, that's a very good point. And we all understand that this is it's a must now. Increasingly, social and emotional learning, this has to be priority. So
I'd love to hear from the others what they think on this. I mean, they're all school owners, and
Yes.
Yeah, I'll add to that, Bharati. So you talking about Chiksan Mahai's work on flow. So there is another gentleman by the name of Stephen Kotler, and he's done a work on Flow Genome Project. They have taken that work of Chiksan Mahai to the next. I mean, they've done basically the next version of Chiksan Mahai's work, and they have come up with a very, very interesting book on flow, and they talk about how people are now utilizing, and this was basically in the military tactics, and the SEALs in the US, they were using these techniques to get into flow states, and adventure athletes are also getting into flow states there's like a formula for that, and there are certain preconditions to entering flow, such as excitement in the activity which you are doing. Perhaps there is some boundaries and safe space where you can show your creativity. So that would be interesting. I'm just throwing that out for you, just since we are reading similar books, I believe.
Yeah.
This is what actually I wanted to happen in this webinar. So we are able to share and learn, and all of us grow together, right? Anyone else wants to add to this social and emotional learning?
Yeah, I think, okay, go ahead.
So go ahead, Krishank, go ahead.
No, so I think in this whole machine age, we kind of forget that we are also machines, and software requires a little bit of tweaking. And so I think it is absolutely important that we recognize that we are the creators, right? Ultimately, we have created the machines. And sorry, I'm a little bit of a technologist, so I can't pretend to think like that. So I think what we are talking about, or we have to talk about the software within us, So we've got to think about mindfulness. We've got to think about how to get kids to really relax in the classroom. For that to actually happen, you've got to have the teachers on board first. Those guys are the ones who've got to first relax and first of all believe truly that these kids know. It's not about knowing more. It's about accepting that knowledge is everywhere, That I also know, that will also know, let me respect. That mutual respect until it doesn't come. And if I'm going to keep making you keep quiet in the class, this is not going to work. So getting the teachers on board, teacher training and stuff like that is what is required. So I think hardwire the machine and the software, and then it will all run well. So getting the teachers and their buy-in is absolutely important.
Light on kar dijiye yahan pe, aur ek pankha ye band kar dijiye.
Yes, Roshan.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what all the other panelists have said. I would just add that basically what we are looking for is a complete ecosystem development where we need to engage every stakeholder at every level. And it starts from the top. I mean, where does the culture of education that we have now, this very competitive, rote learning based culture of education that persists, and which I think we all agree drastically needs to change, where is it coming from? I mean, it starts from the very top. When you have an exam system which is geared around that, then even the most well-intentioned, progressive-minded school leaders, they can't actually change their own syllabus because ultimately they need to produce the exam results. So the exam board has to change. How can we get that to happen? Well, the universities and their entrance criteria is all based on that very hyper-competitive situation where it makes a difference if you have 98.5% or 98.6%. I mean, it's getting absolutely ridiculous. So that comes from that level. And that, of course, how do you change that? That requires structural change in the policy. And something which perhaps, we'll maybe talk about the NEP later. That might be an aspect of the NEP which is missing slightly to really get down to the structural change. But I think that multi-stakeholder approach needs to happen. And that'll be the way also then to start convincing parents, because their mindset also needs to develop before schools can start doing something different, because ultimately schools are accountable to their parents. The parents are paying the fees. So if the parents want something strongly, schools need to be able to work with the parents to develop their mindsets too. So I think we really need this multi-stakeholder approach to affect the kind of change that we all agree on to move to a more skills-based education.
Perfect. I think this is what, Roshan, you kind of summed it up. And this is what actually brought me to this education space, because we realized, as we started talking about, that it is the process. It's not that facts and figure that you mug up. But you have to do this because there is a system design and your assessment process is based on this. And therefore, the educational boards have to realize it and change the activity, and then the process and the system, and for that multi-stakeholder approach and all of that. And this was actually my motivation to come. But since we have already started talking about your vision and ideas and kind of technology, I see we started touching upon. So I know that Krishank has, and specifically during this pandemic, has kind of, his school has become the first Microsoft certified school in Maharashtra or something. And similarly, Roshan is also leading the change in terms of setting up IT and infrastructure in CMS. So guys, would you like to talk a little bit on that too, as to what you did, why you thought it is important, what were the major roadblocks, and how you dealt it? And finally, are people happy with this new change, or people are kind of depressed?
Yeah, I can go.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think in this pandemic scenario, of course, everyone has embraced technology very rapidly. I've been extremely impressed with the attitude of teachers in our schools and across India, because they really embraced this without any complaint and have made themselves rapid learners to adapt to technology. Prior to this situation, things were a little different, I suppose, because the necessity didn't seem quite as strong. But we were already working on technological change, and that's in two ways fundamentally. So one is on the administrative side, that actually we're running these educational chains at scale, and how do we keep scaling up? How do we keep optimizing our operations? Well, technology plays a big role in that. So of course the school ERPs are pretty commonplace now, but beyond that, you need systems to manage other school operations, including anything from procurement to inventory management to transport management. So all of that is one big aspect of technological implementation. But the other is, of course, on the pedagogical front. And that, I think on that front, it's just very, very important to remember at all times that technology is not particularly a solution to anything. It's a tool. It facilitates others. It facilitates teachers in a different way. So it provides them with content, it provides them with data, it provides them with structure, it guides them towards particular interventions, but it is not by any means something that actually fundamentally changes how children are learning. Ultimately, children still need that human interaction with the teacher, and it's the teacher who's going to guide the student through learning. So that's the approach with which we're taking technological change forward.
Any roadblock that you want to talk about?
I think getting people to learn to use new platforms is often hard. It requires a certain amount of training, and I think the thing is that one needs to be slow and steady. So before trying to roll out a new technological initiative, even if there's evidence for it, even if you're absolutely confident that it's going to work, never start something at scale. You start with a pilot project in your own school, maybe with 1 or 2 sections. You find out what are the specific hurdles there. You develop learning from that, you share that learning with others, and then slowly you scale it up. So never take a new initiative all at once at scale. I think, so basically it's learning to be really slow and steady and to respect the long-term change management process that makes it a success.
Great, wonderful. Krishank, do you wish to talk about what you have done these days? I'm hearing some great stories about that initiative.
I mean, I totally agree with what Roshan had to say in terms of having to do a pilot and having to take it step by step and stuff like that. But I do feel that if the platform is very intuitive, right? Nobody had to teach you Facebook, right? Nobody had to teach you how to use Android. The Mark is sitting there nicely. He taught 2 billion people a platform, and everybody intuitively learned the platform. And we've ended up sharing all our data right there. So I really believe that technology can be brought out at scale if you can first prepare people for the change, because I think 2 years back when we started this whole journey of technological implementation in school, I mean, with per se Microsoft, the reason why I went with Microsoft was because I wanted to first sort out the entire OS. I mean, you can put any software into your system. If you don't have the OS and compliance, you're not going to be ahead of the curve. And I really believe if you align yourself with any platform for that matter, your platform then starts to, every year it starts to upgrade itself. Like for example, an operating system like Android, every year you get a new update, right? And our schooling system doesn't get an update every year. It gets updated maybe after every 30 years or like every 5 years that your syllabus is changing and stuff like that. So I feel like
your Android, your OS, which was NEP, is changing after 30 years. Just a side comment.
You see what? Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I mean. So, I mean, today if you look at all these big companies, like for example, Google or like Microsoft and these guys, they've created their own networks to be so large, right? So I think it won't matter if you're a state board school or a CBSE school or an ICSE school, as long as you're a Microsoft school or a Google school. That's how it's going to progress into the future. It will be a very platform-oriented school experience, so that all schools, so for example, Harsh's school, Roshan's schools, all of these schools, if they're on a single platform or are on this, forget the platform, if they're on the internet, we're all connected, right? And it's all about collaboration now. It's not about competition at all. Like all of those competitive outlooks that we're thinking about, those need not even be there anymore. We can all collaborate on a single platform, learn from each other, take it forward. And India is super ripe right now. So yeah, I mean, I think that's what I think about how technology is implemented, can be implemented with that sort of an intent.
But when you thought of this idea of, let's say, digitalizing the entire school and school administration and system, you're learning right from your admission process to, outgoing students process, teachers, parents, students, bringing on this platform. And how was this experience of doing it? And once again, if you would briefly talk about the roadblock as well.
It was mammoth. It was a mammoth task. It was difficult at first, but I think if we do the right kind of advocacy with every stakeholder, they kind of get it. If you tell the parent that this is why we're doing it, they kind of do align with you. It's not like the minute the screen time thing happened, everybody was like, "Oh, Zoom lene ka ki nahi lene ka? What about screen time?" We had all our materials ready, to properly guide them and say that, what, screen time is also watching TV. Screen time is also watching TikTok or whatever that you guys do on the phone. So it's not like screen time is only because of education that your screen time has suddenly increased. So having you've got to have the intent very right. Why you want to get technology? Is it because it's going to look cool? Is it because you want your school to be like a whatever school? So the intent, if it is right, the advocacy becomes right, and the stakeholders automatically connect. This is what I feel. And roadblocks, very simple. Roadblocks were probably like users, right? Humans are the biggest roadblock when it comes to this training. Having them come to on the platform was a big task. Why? So when they were put into this pandemic situation, it was natural. They saw why. So because we started this journey 2 years back. So roadblocks were back then, not now. Like now
Yes,
it
in
is
that
natural.
sense, the pandemic, which was the roadblock for many, was a crisis, worked as an opportunity to help you leverage and make things faster, because now people don't have option.
But like, in what way is this technology in your schools being used? Is it used for like real-time assessments to give instant feedback on how much the child is learning, or are they learning at their own pace? I think it would help to know what are you using technology for in your school.
So yes, we do have, like for example, assessment. That's really helped us automate assessment to a point where we can tell you how long your child was in the school, what was his kind of participation, did he have, how many conversations he had. So when the parent gets to know that level of info about the classroom experience, that changes everything. Today, the parent doesn't know what you're doing in class. Now he's sitting at home and he can see your teacher teaching and they commenting and saying, your teachers are doing a fundamentally great job, so the person who pays for the education versus the guy who receives it are two different stakeholders. They don't understand each other very well. I'm talking about the parent and the student. When the teacher, the parent, and the student, all of them, management, sitting there and watching the classroom, your classes have become better. We were taking demos, we were taking like demo lectures, say probably once a month per teacher back in the day. Now I am sitting and watching 1,200 classes, so having to moderate the content. So everybody, because they're connected, they can see learning happen. That is what I think has changed and given this whole thing a great success, made it a great success.
Certainly, it has also made the entire process very much transparent, because now so far parents who would only come once in a month in this parent-teacher meeting and would get a sense in the 5 minutes that what is happening, not happening, whether my kid is learning or not learning. Here they could also possibly participate in the class and see. I mean, I don't know whether you guys allow parents to participate in the class too,
No,
but at times,
we do.
At times they can see.
And
but now
okay,
yes,
sorry.
please.
I think from the teacher point of view, right? The teacher kind of thought that, okay, I'm in a B.Ed and now I don't have to learn any further, right? Now the fact that she has to go and take up these online courses to actually make her skills better or uplift her skills, she's first time become learner. Every stakeholder has now become a learner. That is huge. I mean, you've got to learn how to use Zoom. You've got to learn how to use this, right? So it puts you in a learning mode. That is something that we saw from the teacher point of view. That they started learning and they felt that now the child also is learning that way.
Which is another good thing, I would say, that we were becoming kind of complacent. That, okay, we know to some extent, I'm the B.Ed, I'm the certified, and I know it all. So becoming, when I think, I realized that I don't know everything. I do have shortcoming. I am a human being and I have to become a lifelong learner. And then my entire behavior, activities and engagement and interaction with the people, with the students and parents changing, because I now think I myself is a learner. And therefore what I intentionally or unintentionally end up is demonstrating how a learner should be behaving and talking, etc. So I think this would create a great environment where everyone thinks we all are learner and lifelong learner. Now let me go to Harsh, who is keeping mum for quite a bit time and listening to all of this conversation. How would you like to add into this, and specifically the initiative you led in Sunbeam group of institutions?
So Amit, what happened was that we had been dabbling with a lot of technology tools for the last couple of years, obviously like everyone else was. I mean, it was at that point, we were just dabbling because we had Microsoft team, they came and they were trying to make us into a showcase Microsoft school. And we called their team and obviously we went through the entire exercise. But even as late as November, we didn't have a clue of what was going to happen. So we had some of our content, which was some of our lesson planning, which was digitized. But it was digitized so that every year the teacher from last year could use most of the lesson plans from last year. And then, it's like a digital library, content library, which we are making. But it was not supposed to, there was no demarcation in terms of synchronous and asynchronous and use of ed tools. And as soon as this COVID hit, so we were stuck as to what we have to do. So the first thing we did was, obviously, like everyone, I don't know about Roshan and Krishank, but for us, we basically just went ahead with Zoom. Basic Zoom lectures using Zoom classes. And obviously it took a while. The roadblocks we had was that a lot of teachers, they didn't know how to mute themselves. They didn't know how to, to mute everybody, and how to use comments. So, and obviously there were some etiquettes also in terms of their presentation, which we because there's a lot of shared resources. So teachers were not able to, the teachers, obviously sometimes they had to be told that, the background, your house is a little messy. So you have to make sure that the background and the lighting, and these are very small, minute things, but this is not evident. This is not self-evident. I mean, you'll have to learn as you go, basically. So that's some of the challenges which we faced. So after we solved the Zoom problem, then we said, okay, now what about, let's do breakout rooms. Let's see what we can do with breakouts. So we started with breakout rooms and chats and sharing of screen. And the teachers, obviously, as they kept evolving, then, once we got to that step, we said, okay, what's the next level? So we had two options to go with the Microsoft and Google Classrooms. And we kind of have, as of now, I mean, we're still in the R&D, nothing is permanent. I mean, I don't want to give a permanent answer to that this is the ultimate platform to switch to, because tomorrow there might be something else. But yes, as of now, so I mean, what I'll tell you, what we are doing right now is that we are trying to train our teachers. We have signed up with the Google Classroom, and we are trying to get the G Suite application, installed and in our school. And the teachers have undergone the training. And now, the first part was the LMS, was the video conferencing part, which was direct teacher lecturing to the student. We call it in flip learning, what the child does outside of the classroom. And for that, we needed a good LMS. So we were in touch with Bunny Pantlal, I think that's her name. And she basically guided us through that process of getting, undergoing a Google training. So yes, we are going now. Now we are in the stage mature enough to go ahead with Google Classroom, and we are putting up our assignments there, and headlines and posting comments, and attaching children being able to attach their documents online. So now we have thankfully moved to that, I would say, second step of integration. I think the blended model happens in stages also. In the first model, maybe you are just using some of this is happening in government schools, where the teachers only taking the WhatsApp of the board. So WhatsApp apne group mein that is going. So now the second step is where now we are looking at a blended learning, where you use Google Classroom. And that training itself will take a lot of time, because we have to migrate all our student data. There's primary student registration number which has to be migrated. A lot of these small technical hitches, and their Google Meet. We're still having problems, because once we got used to Zoom, we all are using. Most of us obviously are using Zoom since they came up. There was problems with Zoom also, that there's a 16-bit encryption, and now there's a 32-bit encryption, which is slightly much more safe. And the hacking is less visible with the new safety features of Zoom. So now we are trying to have a hybrid where Zoom still has the best conferencing app for us, but in terms of LMS, we're going ahead with Google. So a lot of mix and match. I feel that not one platform has been able to answer all my questions. So we've been trying to pick up the best. It's like a buffet table. We're trying to pick up the best we can from whatever we have.
As much I know, Harsh, that recently you have become a huge fan of this blended learning model. So do you want to talk a little bit more as to why it captured your attention, and you think it is one thing that possibly would have more impact on children and learning and the process and all of it? The blended learning model itself.
Okay, so what happened was I've done some distance learning classes also, and I comparison with the traditional model of learning. What I found was that for distance learning classes, it's only possible for very self-directed learners. It doesn't happen when you are a child. That's my personal opinion. I'm just giving my personal opinion, and people are free to.
Certainly, this here we are talking almost everything from our personal perspective.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I find distance learning is only possible when the student or whoever the student is very highly motivated, and I feel that it's not possible with a lot of young children. So when we were incorporating this distance learning model, we realized that the teacher interaction, the accountability has to always come from teachers. Otherwise, students will be, there's different platforms, there's different distractions for them. So they are going on YouTube, they're going on Facebook, and their screen time is being taken away. But there is no accountability because parents are not able to keep their children disciplined to study the way a teacher can. So that's when the idea of blended learning, or flip learning, where children spend some time in the classroom, the teacher holds them accountable, and then the child is allowed some level of freedom to do their independent learning. So that's where my idea, that's where what I felt that a pure distance learning model is, again, I think it's too idealistic, because, and it's only in my opinion, I still I'm still a believer in traditional learning. So I feel that that's where the teacher comes in. The teacher has to works as a mentor / supervisor, and is able to guide, let's say in a flip learning model, that he or she gives the students the assignment, and they come back and we discuss in the classroom what happened. So I think that's where my interest in the blended model came in.
Okay, and let me start then my next round of question from you itself, and then we move to others. Once again, this question that I have been kind of pointing to. Once you completed your studies, like you always wanted to come into the education, and also be with even if you wanted to come, you wanted to be with the Sunbeam group only. What were the other things while you were growing up and were studying in college, or you're getting your MBAs and all done at in Australia? What was that you wanted to do? And then what motivated you, and where do you get your day-to-day drive to get things done here in with the Sunbeam?
I think all of us are looking at ways to make a difference, generally speaking, and I feel that having a legacy model of which my father has built, and my grandparents, and we have capitalized on that. So definitely there's a self-interest there where I felt that the most bang for your buck would come. Hello, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, so I mean, it was there was a lot of practicality there, because the business, the school, as we call ourselves, edupreneurs. I saw my father really expand the schools, and I felt that was practically the best choice to do. Now, obviously, you have to, even within that, even if you take over the schools, you still have to you still have to paint it with your own the canvas with some of your own colors. I mean, if I had to choose the right words. So definitely it's been a ongoing, as I'm getting more and more involved into the whole system, you start to bring in your own colors after a certain point. So you're following, mostly when you are second or third generation, and I'm sure Krishank and Roshan will also agree, and Bharati also. There's a certain model which we have inherited from our, from our parents, and from whatever we have capitalized on that. And now it's up to us to first learn from that experience, and then bring in some of our own color to that picture. So it's an ongoing journey, if you will.
Great. So my question stays the same. Over to you guys. Who wants to be the next? What drives you to do what you're doing? I think Bharati wants to talk.
I actually wanted to talk a little bit about the Edtech thing, but
Sure. Yeah. You can add that as well, please. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Basically, I wanted to say that, we're talking about distance learning and all of those aspects of EdTech, but whatever I have, where I can see, and you can also answer this question, is I feel like technology, the main role is to provide an engaged and personalized learning experience at scale. because especially in like government schools or budget schools, when there are classrooms of like 50, 60, 80 kids, I don't think that there's any one teacher can obviously not provide a personalized experience for every child, right? So that is where your technology comes in, so that every child is learning what they need to learn and that they're at their own pace. So I don't know if that is something, I mean, if that's already being done in like government schools and private budget schools and even in schools of the other panelists. And also when I said real-time assessments, I meant for the teacher, right? To understand, has the child learned this, how many have learned this concept, who has not learned it, okay, let me give extra attention to this one child. So like Ashish Dhawan in one of his like op-eds or something wrote about like measuring the oral reading fluency or measuring the foundational skills. So that's where I think technology has the biggest role in measuring the learning outcomes. So is that happening right now in budget private schools or government schools or even premium schools for that matter?
As far as I'm aware, it's not happening at all in government schools, and it's not happening much in budget private schools, although a few budget private schools have been starting some initiatives in that direction. I think what you're getting at is basically that, I mean, I would agree with you also that there are basically two main pedagogical uses of edtech in schools which are prevalent right now. One is just providing learning content, whether that be videos or presentations or whatever it is that the student is interacting with on a screen to learn material. The other is, as you're saying, basically edtech for formative assessment. So not so much for summative assessment, which is still probably better off just on pen and paper exams, meaning just an end of year kind of assessment to see how a student is doing, but more for the formative assessment, where you provide data on differentiated learning levels within a single class to the teacher of that class to enable that teacher to improve their interventions better. And even something like adaptive learning, which kind of directs the child according to their performance in the technological platform towards content. So it combines these two things, content and formative assessment, to help the student learn according to his or her particular needs. So that is happening certainly in premium schools, like ours, and certainly in the more elite schools. But I don't think it's really happening in the budget private school space much yet. And yet that's where there's huge potential actually for its effectiveness, because there is a major teacher skills gap at that level, because they're paying much lower teacher salaries, they can't attract the talent. So, the technology can facilitate perhaps a progression in the role of the teacher, where the teacher becomes more of a facilitator and a responder to queries and supervisor, while the child learns through a technological platform. So I think that's possibly a realistic direction of travel for the budget private school space, provided that the funding is there to set up the technological infrastructure which is required for that.
I just want to jump in if you...
Please.
So Amit, we spoke on the phone the other day, and we came to realize that you had mentioned that there's a PISA report, which you had said that there's a global assessment, standardization body, and they do it for all the OECD schools, basically. So,
OECD countries.
OECD countries, right? And I don't think India has been taking part in it of late. And what
India participated once in 2010, was ranked 73 countries participated. India was ranked 72nd, 73rd was Kyrgyzstan, and thereafter India did not participate.
So it's essentially we killed off the messenger, if you will. That's the right.
Yeah.
So essentially what I felt was that something like that, and what we also had discussed was that the new NEP report, it's basically talks about keeping teachers at the center and the pedagogy at the center, whereas what Bharati, I'm just gonna try to answer Bharati's question here, that the assessment, the technology comes later. First comes is the developmental milestone. What are the milestones? I'm not.
Please carry on.
I'm sorry. I don't want to make any assumptions here.
No. Please carry on. This is the kind of conversation ideally I wanted.
So, I don't want to give any presumptions here, but I just feel that the developmental milestones come first, and uske baad you have the edtech tools. You have the edtech tools which comes after you have the developmental milestone. The child has to be at the center of the studies. By class 4, he should know a certain degree of English, maths, And we do the asset test, which is, I'm sure Roshan must be and Bharati must be aware of that, the asset test which we do. So it's about global benchmarking of our students with everybody else. So I feel that we need global benchmarks to assess both private and budget and government schools to see how they are doing, and keeping the child at the center. I think we still definitely need to work backwards from there, and then look at how we can make sure that we meet those standards. And those standards can be met by incorporating digital tools. You don't necessarily have to invest a huge infrastructure, but you can start backwards and keeping the child at the center of everything.
Yeah. And this assessment is not something that's scary. Like, the idea is not that, oh, I'm going to assess this school and they're not doing a good job. The idea is I'm assessing the child to see how I can help. So it's still like, it's just to be able to help the child do better. It's not like an exam or a test. It happens all the time, like through the day, every day, is how I visualize it.
Amit, I'd like to
yes, please.
I'd
Yeah,
like
yeah,
to
yeah, please,
spin this technology piece to a different
yes.
side. The thing is that when we talk about technology, it's not really about the platform, the software, or anything, because we're looking at the current digital scenario and we're talking about technology. But you know what? In India, we never even had a proper industrial revolution. How many carpenters do you know who use machine tools? Technology in actual hardware tools, vocational aspects, those are also places where technology can play a huge role. Why are we doing what we are doing? The intent, I think, comes foremost. Like, for example, it's not just about the software, right? It's also about, why are you doing the robotics class that you're offering in your school? Why are you doing the drone class that you're doing in your school? Why are you doing the rocketeer? My cat, I'm so sorry. The rocketeering thing in your the rocketeering thing in your school. So the idea is that you've got to think of technology as a holistic thing, as a hardware thing also, as a software thing also. Current conversations around school that I'm seeing are very specific to just software. Okay, which one should I use? WhatsApp karo, Facebook karo, ye karo, I'm saying technology mein bahut kuch hai. There is also hardware. There is also, like, for example, a parent in a budget school's mindset who's a carpenter is that I want to make my child an engineer. The image is of an engineer, but it could also be a carpenter with a machine tool. We have not had that industrial revolution I'm talking about. We don't use these tools, It's also because NEP talks about actually using your hands. So skill and will, both. This is also another way, because when I went to Finland, right, those kids, if we get to do those things in school, we would be true creators. We would create the chipsets, the machines, everything. I mean, we don't give that opportunity. We're very, very, how do you say, safety oriented. I'm not saying let kids use a saw tomorrow, but I'm saying, why don't you give them the opportunity to actually truly create?
Absolutely.
These vocational aspects of technology also need to be a big, huge part of the new revolution that I would want to sort of take forward. Labs where you, like, not just a maker space ki bhai ye kit kharid ke de diya and the kit mein se bana ke, not like that. Intent has to be right. Why can I talk about, say, I want to send up a satellite tomorrow? What if a kid comes and tells you, I want to send up a satellite tomorrow? Are you able to sort of provide him all of that to make sure that he can put a satellite up there? So technology has to be goal oriented, like one single project and a goal. Let the whole community build towards that. So we need to uplift these budget school parents. What if it were a robotic hand that was giving out a juice machine? He doesn't have to be that same guy who's giving juice through a simple machine. I think let's talk about skills and vocational training through technology. That is important. I mean, that is what I see India going towards. We skipped through the industrial revolution. 1 bhi nahi properly kiya, 2 bhi nahi kiya, 3 bhi nahi kiya. Now we're talking about 4. IoT aa jayega classroom. But pehle ka to solve karo. That is what I feel. We should sort of bring that.
Very, very important point. I can relate to this idea. It's very, very important, and we need to at least, as initially Roshan talked about, it's a process, and therefore when you go through this process, then also you understand how things are made and designed. Anyways, what is the next thing you guys want to talk about? I have my questions, but I don't want to bring that directly to it.
I want to talk about a little bit of, so where like Krishank was just saying, and like there are certain things he wants to do in his school, which, may not be the nationally prescribed thing that needs to be done, or the government has prescribed. So, do you feel like in your schools you have that freedom and autonomy to create a curriculum that can be like completely radical? Like Elon Musk's school, for example, is like completely unconventional and it's for profit and all of that. So do you think that schools have the at least curricular freedom to try something like way out of like left base?
I think first it always going to become and start from intent. Why do you want to do it? What is the reason you want to do something like that? Also, until that aspect is first cleared, I don't think going towards sort of the curriculum even comes there. So I'll give you a simple example. Okay, yeah, okay. Answering your question, do you have the freedom? From a very management point of view, I'm the only child. I have all the freedom. From like my management point of view, I'm saying like, yes, I do have all the freedom. I would say it's all about getting the parents on board. That freedom maybe will be a little restricted because I think those guys are going to be the only ones who are going to be like, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to get this new age thing when something already is existing and is working? Why do you want to reinvent the wheel? I think that will be challenging, but I think it is doable. We should go into that direction. If you really want to compete with PISA, I mean, in PISA with other schools, other countries, we have to sort of go that way. I mean, why can't schools be for profit? Why can't schools specialize in multiple things? Why does it have to be only about their passing an exam? These kind of things need to really, really break. And yes, freedom is there. Why not? If all of us today decide upon saying that, yeah, why don't we join hands and do a project together? I think nobody's going to stop us, right? I mean, at least in my side, nobody's going to stop me. So the intent, when I'm saying intent, for example, like what is the intent of getting drones in the classroom? Can you answer that? What is the intent of getting, say, for example, a robotics in the class? You've got to give it a use case. Drones are going to enable you to learn how to fly an object. And one day, maybe you can invent a flying machine to fly yourself. So it's teaching you how to...
It's just exposure.
It's exposure, but you know what? That's what we're doing wrong. I feel is just ki like inko robotics ka ek taste de dete. We give them a little bit of drone ka taste. We give them a little bit of. It's not fun like that. For example, like why are we talking about goggles that we're going to wear? Who's going to teach computers how to look? We are the experiment. These guys are experimenting on us to feed the machines later. So. You've got to look at it from that aspect of what the intent is. Robotics kya karega? Robotics jaake space mein tumhare liye ghar banayega, and then so that you can go there to Mars and land and go into the house. So it's not that robotics ka taste deke ek exposure deke ho jayega, ya NASA ka ek trip kara diya. It's got to be let the child dream that big, or give him that goal ki this is what you can do with this, and then he starts to truly create and innovate. Then you're
unleashing the power of imagination. I would say you start imagining, otherwise your thoughts are always restricted.
And truly, like if you heard of the Pygmalion effect, right? It's like you put the benchmark to a very high benchmark, so that everybody then performs better when the benchmark is high. Today your education system is 32 marks passing, 32 marks ka passing. So you have a 32% country. How will you compete at 70% when you will say 70% passing at 70% country banega? See, I'm not talking about, don't get me wrong, rural school sub hai, I get all of that. But I'm saying that we've got to benchmark it so high that they aspire. That's how I think we should be doing this. I think we're doing
any comments? It will be very interesting to get comments on this statement that we need to have a very high benchmark so that people aspire. Roshan?
Yeah, I think maybe, but provided that we're benchmarking the right thing, right? I mean, if we're benchmarking within the existing examination paradigm, then it's going to be counterproductive because we'll be making everyone aspire to something which is not actually very useful, more rote learning and all of that. So we need to be benchmarking the right thing. We need to be benchmarking skills. We need to be benchmarking, as Krishank was rightly saying, fueling the power of students' imaginations so that they are working on interesting projects with some practical intent. I think that's absolutely right. I think I have to also respectfully disagree with some of what Krishank was saying, just the idea that schools really do have the freedom to experiment. I personally don't think that the policy environment and the structural environment in general really does give us that freedom. Yes, I think, specialist schools are there. You do have a few alternative schools in India, and actually, CCS, which works closely with NISA, did a conference on alternative schooling last year, and I think the founder of CCS, Parth Shah, he sends his own kids to alternative school, and that exists in India. There is a certain amount of enthusiasm, but it's pretty rare and niche. And the scope for that scaling up to the mass is still pretty small. I think the reason for that goes back to what I was saying earlier about the multi-stakeholder environment that we operate in. If I today wanted to really, as Bharati was describing, shift CMS to a completely alternative or really progressive new kind of pedagogy, like Elon Musk style, I doubt very much that my parents will stay in the school and they'll take their children out and take them somewhere else, right? So I don't realistically have that freedom until the mindset changes and until that's what is being demanded. So yes, we have to work towards building that mindset. We have to start introducing whatever things we can at our own level. But if we say, okay, well, the board exams don't really help our kids, they're useless, so let's do our own curriculum. Well, fine, that's great, but ultimately the kids are going to stop coming. So we need to balance it right. And meanwhile, we need to keep lobbying and keep working that the environment changes so that we get the freedom and space to actually do that in a bigger way.
Sorry, I just So what I was trying to say is absolutely, like, you will at the end of the day do what's good for you as a edupreneur. But I think what's worrying is that we want you as the school owner to have the full autonomy and freedom to decide what is best for your school. And I feel there's a lot of kind of rising apprehension among the country's private schools of government interference. So it's one thing if your parents don't want what you're offering, but the government shouldn't be coming in to like say, okay, don't do this or do this or have these fees, have these kind of regulations. So there's a lot of fear of dilution of both curricular and financial autonomy of the school owner. And that, I think, is extremely demoralizing for school founders and investors who want to be able to maybe radically experiment or provide students with globally comparable education, is what I was trying to get at.
Perfect. In that sense, let me ask you, Bharati, this question. Let's say if you were in charge of drafting this new education policy, what would have been your thing? What is like the top thing that you would put there?
Yeah, so my top wish, like I said, is this, like complete freedom and autonomy to private schools to decide what they want to do in terms of curriculum and how much they want to charge their parents. And I feel like the proper role of the central and state and local government is to focus their attention on upgrading and modernizing the country's 1.2 million government schools so that all children have access to excellent, free, high quality education if those schools are really good. If the government schools are really good. And private unaided schools, many of which are already reputed islands of excellence, need to be given full autonomy. Like they know what they're doing, just leave them alone. So that is my wish for a change in the new education policy. And I don't think they've really confronted that. I think we need a new modern manifesto of what education has got to look like. And we have to shed the socialist baggage and liberalize the education sector.
I'll just add to
yes, your comment.
Yeah. So actually, at the risk of sounding a little politically incorrect, I think the NAP was in fact a document which had to, there's a lot of people it had to address to, and I don't know if I can use the word appease to at the same time. And they've taken points from what Shashi Tharoor has said. They incorporated, there were 6 points that Shashi Tharoor ji had said. And this is become a vast document and a lot of ideas. It's a very idealist document, if you will. But one line which they really said, which I really liked, was that they They said the private sector, for the first time they admitted, has to be encouraged. That's the words which were used in the document. And now it seems like that it's more of a guideline as opposed to being prescriptive. It's more guiding. And I feel that for schools who have the resources to do so, I find that the semester system, the flexibility of picking one subject. Let's say if you're in class 10th and you want to pick up basic maths or business maths or advanced math. So even if you're in 10th class 10th with your other students, maybe your maths is slightly weak and you want to take basic maths, you have the option to have a very flexible, basically your entire timetable is not dependent upon the class you are studying in. You can basically go to a different class. So you can go for advanced math, and then you can go for basic English. It's like something like they said that if you're able to, if you can provide those things, it's your I feel that they've given slightly more freedom. I don't know. I would like other panelists to also say. I think that this NEP.
I agree with you. I agree with you, because most of the like our parent generation, I'm so sorry, but then they're also on this, they're listening to us. I mean, they've all looked at, oh my God, aisa kar diya, waisa kar diya. I mean, nobody looked at it very objectively and positively, I feel. I think it's upon us to start looking at it from a very positive way. Like, for example, grade 5th, you can have, your mother tongue or regional language. I think that's brilliant. I think we should do something like that. I really think it's amazing. Implementation point of view, we'll have to really, really ideate and figure out. I'm not going to touch upon it. I think that's a brilliant thing, because culture will be passed in your mother tongue the best. I mean, what happens otherwise? You're teaching kids to think in Hindi and then speak English. That's why instead of saying early in the morning, you'll say morning. Morning, you call me. So I think it's important to first see, because India is a very diverse country, right? Languages and all of that is so diverse. We have got to sort of address these things. And I think that up to grade 5 language thing was brilliant. I mean, every other country, Finland, Bolo, whatever you talk about, Japan, China, everybody has their languages, language 1 and then English language 2. They should be classified. This is a trade language. This is a mother tongue language. This is a state language. We should give these languages context. They are a vehicle of culture. So I think from that point of view, I really like that idea. I think I can use that. I would love to use that. You can bring your parents here, come into school and teach them those languages. Why not? Collaboration, next level it will be. So
while we are commenting on NEP, let's hear from Roshan also. What's your initial comment?
Well, I think the NEP is really it's like a vision document. It's almost more of a vision statement than a policy. And I'm not sure that really has a place in policy making. I mean, as Harsh was saying, he talked about how there's more freedom. It talks about giving more freedoms on how you might structure your curriculum or stretch students or whatever. My point is, why is it up to a policy document to state all that anyway? What policy should do, what good policy making is, and that's just experience from all high performing countries around the world. Good policy making is providing an environment and a set of conditions in which a system can autonomously flourish. So rather than trying to prescribe that, okay, before you had only this much freedom and now we'll give you the freedom to do this thing and this thing, it doesn't make sense to make those prescriptions. It's prescriptive freedom. It's almost like an oxymoron. I think it's much better to just create a policy environment where schools are free to do what they want. And it's up to parents to make informed choices. If the school is in doing what it wants, is providing a bad education, well, fine, then it'll close down of its own accord when the parents take the children away through their own choice. So why does the policy need to prescribe the direction of pedagogy? I think let that be up to schools, and the quality will sort itself out through parents making informed choices. I think policy can facilitate creating an environment in which informed choices can be made by providing, for example, school vouchers, which I'm sure you'll talk about later, by providing, for example, transparency of information about school outcomes, quality checks on inspection on what's going on in a school, and then publishing that information so that parents are equipped to make informed choices. But ultimately, it should be up to the parents to decide whether the school is doing well or not. And if the school is not doing well, it'll close down. And over time, all schools will therefore be moving in a positive direction and will innovate and will come up with great ideas. And I think that's the other thing, right? I think the NEP sort of contains a set of slightly innovative ideas. Well, great, but they're not the only innovative ideas that exist. If it's more open up to the free schools thinking of their own things, then thousands more ideas will keep coming in. We don't have to be restricted to the NEP's vision. We just need a broader, wider vision of giving schools the autonomy to keep working on improving their own quality in order to survive. So I think that's what policy ought to have done. So if I go back to your original question, Amit, on what's my sort of one wish list item for the NEP, it would have been that. It would have been that stop trying to prescribe a vision for pedagogy and just create an environment in which schools can autonomously progress and improve their quality.
Great. And so two things I would say, and I really liked the same thing I think Bharati also talked about, is giving autonomy to, let's say, private players, private schools, and the government should take this as an opportunity to improve the delivery in their own schools, which is also important. And while one school's performance is improving, let's say government school performance is improving, will also help and create new standard and more competition for private schools to set up new benchmarks. Or even private schools are performing good, it will also kind of demonstrate for public education systems that, see, these things are possible. And many of these new ideas, so-called the new modern reform-oriented ideas that NEP is adopting, most of these ideas, see, some or the other private school guys were already doing. So it was happening.
Yeah.
So, you took the ideas and now you think these are the best practices, we possibly incorporate here as well. Why not, right? But I really like the enthusiasm and the idea that Bharati really answered my question. And that I've been thinking, Bharati, for you, it's after last 30 years, after 1992, India designed this new education policy that has become national education policy now. Start thinking 30 years in the future when India would be kind of coming back to the table to redesign its education policy. Now my wish list will be Bharati should be there as a drafting committee head to draft the new education policy. And I think all of us would like you to be there. So start doing your background work.
Done.
How many votes for Bharati as a drafting committee chairperson?
But I do think they need like age diversity, right? Like on the panel of policymakers.
Yeah, 100%. So that time you also do consultation with kids, involve them also in the drafting process. Why not? And therefore we are vouching for you. Anyways, because we also have the time till 6 o'clock, and now it's I also wanted to take this conversation. Really, we started talking about the tech and the reality of tech integration and also the future of it. So there is also one question by one of the participants who is asking about how do you see India 10 years down the line? And then, in fact, I would further encourage that, could you think about the world 20 years down the line? How does it look like? And then can we kind of start thinking what kind of changes we need to bring in, or you need to bring in your own educational institution to match up to that demand? So any thoughts on this? Who sees future the best? Krishank. I would in fact quickly want you to comment also on what is this, because you talked about as a technology, the new goggles coming, right? Reliance Jio is also thinking of coming into education and give you goggles and you can see all the content and interact. So what are those guys up to?
They just want you to train their machines. That's all. See, ultimately, think about it. You're really objectively think about it, okay? How would you create humanoids? Right? You will have to have people wearing these glasses. They're going to come on you. Then next, they're going to go in you. So be prepared. Next 5 years, Bharati, trust me on it. Now I have a
transhumanism.
Okay, everyone spoke about Elon Musk, right? Do you all know about Neuralink or not? He's putting chips into people's brains. So everything today, you have your wired earphones, you have your what is that, unwired earphones. You're going to wear glasses. You're going to put watch on your hand. These are all going to go in you. Trust me on it. I mean, you guys really don't believe me, right? So these guys are. So ultimately, what's going to happen is you're going to make a humanoid robot. You're going to make him wear glasses, and these humans, us, will wear those glasses and walk around, record the world, and then they will make. How will you enable dexterity in a machine? We will be enabling that. We are the one who feed the information. Today, how can AI be? We gave AI all the memories, all the photos, and now it's collected all of it and made intelligence out of it, right? Who's giving the data? We are giving the data. That's the pitch. Acha, about if you talk about drones, they want you to learn how to fly because maybe in the future there are going to be cars who are going to fly. How will you learn? See, it's about learning how to fly an object. Whether you sit in it or not sit in it is a different story. You don't know how to drive a plane today, right? Or fly a plane, but you know how to fly a drone. So principally, you know how an object moves in 3D. That's what they're training you for, the future. They're already way ahead of us. So that's why drones, that's why robotics, and that's why all of these things. So yeah, we're going to be a very different society going forward, a very, very different society. And this 2020 has kickstarted that. Everybody's online today, right? Everybody knows all of that. So it's going to happen.
I just want to add to this that I find that there'll be a lot of polarization, political polarization, both on the left and the right. I feel that that's the, if I was to have this, and maybe I'm a little afraid of what's going on in some ways, but I find that there'll be two very extreme camps which will be formed. And we'll have to, I don't know how we will reconcile those two, fronts, left and the right. And I think that's the battle. And I think a lot of polarization will happen. I feel that because of this. So we have to reconcile that, and it's a scary time, but we have to, come and have more discussions like this.
This is
have to have more discussions like what we are having here. Like
certainly, and this is where education is so important, and educational institutions are so important. Because right from the beginning, if you can teach the ideas and values of pluralism, having democracy, having agreement to disagreement, right? And living together, all of this, one thing I love about Roshan schools, when I go there, they greet you as a Jai Jagat. It's not like only Jai Hind. It's Jai Jagat. We are talking about the entire world and entire humanity wherever there is. So we are all together. I love that idea as a giving people a global outlook as well. And that is where I see education is fundamentally very important. You guys are building the future and putting up the values. In fact, there is a comment and question also about how do we kind of install the right set of values in the kids. I'm also using this word install. I should not be using it, thinking about the value-based education system and what kind of society. In fact, this is another. The time is lagging, but this is a wonderful conversation. If you guys have some time, we can expand it for another 10-15 minutes because this is something I see very, very important, and that is where I am very hopeful with the young people coming into education. And when they are coming into education, they could possibly think of creating a society. So school does not happen to be like any other so-called business or activity. School happens to be a medium to transform the entire community in the standard of community, their behavior, their values, their tradition, with the quality of education and education system and the quality of school and teachers in a community, you would know the kind of the crime rate it would potentially have, the conflicts it would have, the people who would come and solve and resolve the questions and queries. While technology is taking us to a different direction, we also have to think of in terms of social composition, societies, values, philosophy, ethics. So any comments on this?
So from a very polarization point of view, I think when we talk about duality, right?
Your audio is breaking, Krishank. Okay, so Krish, you take a break. Let me hear by the time from someone else.
Yeah, I think the best prediction we can make about the future is that we can't predict anything. So I think I think there are three priorities for education: skills, skills, and skills. And I think that what that means is that we need to develop those characteristics in our students which are essentially human. All those things which can't be automated by artificial intelligence, all of those things which are uniquely biological and humanistic. Those are the things which we need to prioritize more than ever. So it's about analytical thinking and critical thinking, but not just that, because even that can be automated within the next couple of decades, we think. But really, truly creative thinking, emotional thinking, and moral values. I think those are really the things which are going to remain essentially human, probably forever, or at least for our lifetimes. It'll be a long time before robots take that over. And so I think these need to be the priorities for schooling. And I think, we have been trying to introduce meaningful character education in our schools. And I think a lot of schools have been doing that. I like that there's been this shift away from the traditional method, which is to have a period in the timetable called moral education, where everyone sits down and the teacher tells them that this is how you should be a good person and that's how you would be a bad person. And I think that that's such an archaic nonsense, which is finally being phased out. Rather, moral education is a aspect of the culture of a school, which needs to pervade through everything. It needs to be relevant in maths lessons and science lessons and English lessons and whatever. And of course, the teachers are the starting point for that. So it's about, it comes right back to the point at which you recruit teachers. You need to be looking for teachers who are passionate about values and who really are in the profession for wanting to raise children with good values. I think that's where it all starts. And then it also really is very important to have that in the leadership, because that's how it will permeate through an organization's culture and then be present in all of the classrooms. So I think that's where we need to go on the sort of values and character learning front.
Perfect. Krishank, you were saying something and we lost you. So if you can quickly mention that.
So actually, when in my school, I studied in Chinmaya International. So we were part of the whole Chinmaya mission and their entire value system. So they have this thing called CVP, which is Chinmaya Vision Program, which has the entire value-based education thing mapped into the curriculum. And that's something that we also picked up. And now we are a vision school they're all in my schools also. We use exactly the same framework that they have given in our schools. So this is something very deep rooted in personally me, my family, and the school culture that we've built around, where we have kind of been able to train and get teachers to understand what is value-based education. It's not about just hygiene and health and morality and stuff like that. It is way beyond that. Having to teach, because today marks is treated like currency, right? Better marks, better iPhone. So, 70%, not 70, sorry, what am I saying? 90% iPhone, so stuff like that, So kids need to know ki by marks, and then it gets replaced by money in the future when you go to a job, right? So these kind of things, these kind of dialogues are what we have in our schools to tell children that these marks, although important and necessary for your growth in terms of your career and education, are just a medium, of exchange. And then it comes to exchange goes to transaction goes to my previous topic on duality. Ultimately, it all boils down to that whole duality aspect, where we are always forced as humans to choose one. And our objective as educators should be to get them to choose whichever one that they want to choose. That's all. There's no right or wrong one. If you can just tell them that
this will take a long conversation to understand the duality aspect.
We'll have a new thing on spirituality. We need a new webinar on spirituality.
So I'm as big as a spiritualist as a technologist. So I think next thing we should have on that.
Great. While I got to hear at least in bits and pieces from everyone in terms of their motivation as to why they decided to come into education, I missed, I think, Bharati, your part. So first, I would love to hear a little bit more about the initiative that you have started. What motivated you to come into the education segment itself? That's number one. And then another thing, if you could further add to it, because now we are also short of time, I need to wrap it up, is your dreams and aspirations from the education practice, this field of education practice. Dreams and aspirations.
So I'm in the education space because I certainly think it's an extremely exciting space. It is definitely the key to kind of our unlocking the future of our country in terms of like even as an economic powerhouse, if not like in other aspects, in other ways. But I think, yeah, the education space has held a lot of excitement for me, and it was and it's it's the key to bringing out change in our country. And of course, I mean, I can't deny that my family has been in the education space, so that's where I kind of got exposure to the importance of education. So that is kind of what brought me into this. And then I just realized that there's so much to be done, and there's so many aspects to it that need to be considered. So there's, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm constantly learning. So it's great to be in education if you're a lifelong learner. So yeah.
So what's your next milestone? What is the target that you're keeping for yourself? Like 5 years down the line, my organization should have at least this.
Good question.
Okay.
I'll answer that question for her. I think she wants to be better than her father in terms of as a journalist and, and have a better education world seminar.
No, I would definitely say that I think contribute in whatever way I can. I work with a lot of schools in India and abroad, bring in global best practices into schools in India. A lot of kind of bringing in more corporate efficiency into schools in India, and highlighting and starting dialogues like the one we're having today. I think is key to bringing about change, right? So I'm not a school owner. All of these people on this panel are school owners, but I think these dialogues that we have are, I love them, and I think they're so important in bringing about change. So I think that's my big role, and also being.
I think for one day of the year, you own all the 1,000 schools.
Perfect. Krishank and Harsh, your dreams and aspiration, are you guys keeping some milestone? Like Harsh, I know like you have 23 branches of Sunbeam schools. Mm-hmm. So are you guys setting up some new target? There is some plan for expansion, or do you think that it's good enough? Or we'll see as organically grows, there is no plan or whatever?
I find, I'll be a little bit, I think that right now I'm taking more of a conservative approach and seeing how the policies are, because I find that in some fractions of the government, and I don't want to speak this on this forum, but we've spoken it in our private discussion that I've had some reservations with some people and their ideas of where they want to take education from school choice to like nationalizing of schools. So we have to be a little bit more careful. My thought process is that right now I'm only focusing on the digital and blended model. So milestones will be according to those for me personally. And obviously, once we get that and we have a solid footing as to which way the sector is heading, then obviously, those milestones will also change. So from qualitative, it's a mix between qualitative and quantitative standards. So qualitative, right now I'm mostly focusing on the qualitative standards aspect of things. But yes, obviously, once we know that the climate is again becoming more investment friendly, then the numbers, the scaling up model is also in the pipeline for me, personally speaking.
Perfect. Krishank and Roshan.
I think Roshan, go ahead. I'm still articulating my thoughts.
Well, I personally hate to reduce education to business type thinking or a numbers game. I don't want to set any milestone that we should have so many numbers of students or branches or anything like that. I personally think that if we focus on providing the right quality, then the expansion happens by itself. I think the parents start coming based on our quality. So really my only focus is just to relentlessly improve quality in every possible way, to introduce skills-based teaching throughout all the age groups in our education, and to make sure that there's engagement with all of the stakeholders, including the parents, to shift their mindset so that they are willing to work with us on that and work with us on shifting pedagogy. So I don't think it's about setting any targets or business targets like that. I think it's just about constantly striving to improve the quality of delivery that we do through all the means that we have available, whether that's pedagogical upgrade or teacher training or doing operations in a different way or doing recruitment in a different way. The possibilities are endless. One has to look at this whole ecosystem holistically, and one has to pursue that relentlessly.
Perfect, perfect. Krishank?
So yeah, future plans. For example, right now we've reached a milestone of becoming a showcase school very soon this month. So Microsoft Showcase to be precise. So I want to now start sit and consolidate the entire thing up, and considering the teachers are all on board and the child now at the level the playing field is leveled. Finally people are on my playing ground of technology, and I think I want to create these wow moments every other month, where we do really relevant, fun, technology-based things for the parents and the children, so that they, and even the teachers, so because for teachers now it's a cool job, right? It's become a school teacher to cool teacher journey for them. So I think it's about, yeah, I mean, they are corporatized, right? Today they have a Microsoft
That's a
account.
wonderful phrase. School, not a school teacher, a cool teacher.
A cool teacher.
So, that's actually the name of my training program that I do for the teachers to get them on board with technology. But thank you. So yeah, get consolidating the whole thing, because so many ideas. I can't even tell you. If I go on this another webinar, you'll require for that. So I think milestones would be to get everybody together, consolidate all of it, and then think about where to go. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, even for me, the number of children or the number of schools, I don't know which model, because my current school, which is 1,500 people, if you can accommodate, online, if I have a beautiful LMS, and I can have 50,000 kids. So I don't need to have more buildings or more schools, because the model is very fluid at the moment. So I'm thinking, I mean, I'm still exploring what is there, but I know for sure that I want to create as many as technology based wow moments going forward. That's pretty much what I want to do.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much. It's great to understand the focus on quantity and quality as well. At the same time, also being cautious of the ecosystem wherein this entire educational system operates. Anyways, my final question, and then I leave up to you guys whether we have to stop and get back to our work or do something else, is a quick comment on the NISA's campaign. NISA at the moment, because we all know there is a pandemic, and therefore there is economic stress on parents, and parents are not able to kind of afford to pay the school fee, and therefore NISA is running a campaign wherein we are kind of requesting the government of India to come in, as they have come in for a stimulus package for corporate sector and many other sectors. So also help these students and parents with kind of some money, so that they are able to pay the fee in the educational institution wherever they are involved. And we realize that the major victims are the low-cost private schools who don't have much finance to sustain. And if we really want to save that, what James Truby calls a beautiful tree, these small little schools which are operating in lakhs, how do we save them? And one way is funding the student directly, at least for this pandemic period. So any quick commentary on how you guys think it's a good idea, bad idea, it's workable, not workable? Please feel free. You can support it, criticize it, whatever is your genuine feeling about the demand.
I think we need to create a model which is very
Krishank, you want to go first?
Yeah. I think what our system today is lacking is trust. Parents trust over schools trust over the government, and the government's all of it. Parents trust over the government also. So we need to sort of kind of bridge that gap of trust, because every time we think that the government is taking our money or the school guys are taking our money and we're not getting the money's worth, the conversation around that. So if sort of DBT is a model of choice, what NISA trying to say is to get people to give them a choice. But that can only happen when there is trust built around it. Will the money really come into my account? Will the money really be used for the reason why it is used for? Will the government actually not know about my taxes? Should I come online and should I make my a bank account exposed to the government, so many things. So until those kind of things are like, for example, trust is built, because who builds schools? Trust builds schools. Today, people don't trust us because we've somewhere down the line ruined it, right? And see, don't get me wrong when I'm saying that, but we are the culprits when it comes to sort of letting go of that trust that we could have built. Today, people don't look at us with the same light that they used to. So the government coming
100%.
in,
As we are talking about reform in policy space, we also need to constantly do reform in our own self.
yes. So I feel that the DBT will bring transparency, and the transparency will restore the trust back into society. That is the model if would have to be done, would have to be done that. Because today you don't trust doctors so much, right? Doctors कितना कमा रहे हैं, स्कूल वाले कितना कमा रहे हैं, but हम कितना कुछ दे रहे हैं वो नहीं दिख रहा because पैसों की बात चल रही है. So DBT will bring transparency. I think so. So trust के बारे में है. It's not about money. I feel it's about trust. Yeah, that's my sort of.
Great.
That's what I feel about this whole thing.
Great. Wants to go the next?
Okay, so I'll just go next if that's okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So when the NISA campaign started 2 years ago, and we had been in touch with you and Kulbhushan ji, and we had this discussion that you gave a solution how to save the budget private schools, and how to, some of the facts and figures which you came up with was that most of the schools in India, and they are not they're not in the elite category. Most of them are private schools. Their fees is under 1,000 rupees or something. I think, is that correct, Amit ji?
Yeah. Yes.
So I think that they provide a lot of utility for students because they are dependent. They're governed by free market. And it would be, and they have a SOP, they have a system, they have teachers whose livelihood depends on them. So, that system is under threat. It has been under threat because, frankly, I don't find the government being too willing to support that sector. So I think that we need a lot of advocacy. And obviously, what you have done is that not only have you done advocacy for the private sector, for the budget private schools, but you also have taken it the next step by suggesting a solution also. Problems to har jagah hai, but you have given a solution that this is the solution, that DBT and direct cash transfer in the accounts of all the, the parents. And from there, the parents get to choose whichever school they want to go to. This is for school choice, school choice, basically school voucher scheme. Now, I'll just say that even in that, there is direct cash transfer. I find it to be the most smoothest of all, because it completely takes away the middleman from in between. I mean, it tries to. It take away the middleman. But we also know that there's also a lot of corruption even at that level. And obviously, this Chinese whisper is being played at every level that Krishank had, mentioned. So there's always Chinese whisper being played. वो पैसा आपके account में गया कि नहीं खाते में? Was that money used for the right cause? Did they use that money on their instant gratification? The parents. What if the father is alcoholic and there's a lot of things which can go in that also. But having said that, I find that if it gets taken up. And it's not a bad ideal to strive for. It's not a bad ideal to strive for. And we should definitely push for this, because then it'll give it'll give more, salaries. It'll mean more salaries for the staff, for the teachers also. The teachers need to be respected in our country. So I'm definitely for DBT, and let's hope for its success.
Great, thank you very much. Roshan, you want to talk?
Yeah, I'm 100% with NISA on this. Absolutely back the campaign for DBT. I think, you look at the statistics, Harsh referred to them, but I think, more specifically, the vast majority of all schools in India are these budget private schools. If you define them in terms of absolute fee, like less than 1,500 rupees a month, then it's 70 to 80%. And if you define budget private schools as those schools which charge less fee per student than the government spends on per pupil in government schools, then I think 89% of all schools in India are budget private schools. And then we've seen between 2010, 2018, 2.4 crore students have migrated from government schools to private schools. We now have over 50% of all students in the country in private schools. That's despite the fact that these students are giving up not only free tuition, but also free school meals, free books, free uniforms. They're choosing to come and pay for all of these things, despite the fact that the government school is there. So what is going on? I mean, the situation is really bleak. We have, on any given day, 24% of all government school teachers are absent, and in some states it's as high as 45%. The new education policy doesn't actually even mention the word accountability once throughout the entire document, where we've got this clear crisis of accountability. So I think the only solution to all of these really deep structural problems is empowering parents with the choice to decide about the quality of schools, which forces schools to actually compete to improve their outcomes, which forces schools to present something to parents that in order to retain their students, forces schools to keep striving for better quality in order to keep their funding come in. So the only way to achieve that is DBT. I think India has had great success in recent years with DBT across a range of sectors. So now it makes perfect sense to bring that in to education as well. And I think that's quite clearly the main solution at this point to the problems that are deeply structurally in India's education system.
Very well put.
Thank you, Roshan. Bharati?
Yeah, agree 100%. I mean, I would definitely also back this campaign. And I think absolutely this is something the government needs to support its public with right now. And DBT seems to be the best way to do it. So I'm 100% behind NISA on this.
Great. Thank you very much, guys. I think for this, NISA is running a campaign. And the beauty of this campaign is this is entirely digital. So we are not anywhere like any other traditional campaign of Dharna rally or anything. It's all happening on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, change.org, the online petition, video making competition, and all of that. We'll talk something separately. So number one, if you guys like this idea, certainly it would be request from me as personally, and also from NISA, if you guys could be active, passing on the word and passing on about the campaign would be a great thing. This is where I end all my questions. If people have this, last, let's say 30 minutes, 30-second thing to, if anything that they want to add on, or we wrap it up. Any last comment, thoughts that you want to pass it on?
I just want to say thank you so much, Amit, for inviting me to be a part of this. I think this, it was a super cool and refreshing format to have. And, it's so awesome to be with all these wonderful people who always have fantastic ideas. And it's really nice to talk. And I'm really, really grateful and thankful that you organized this. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Bharati. Other guys, any comment that you have, like last 30-second comment?
Yeah, thanks a lot. I mean, it's always a pleasure to have a real, free-flowing discussion and just engage each other's thoughts. And I really enjoyed hearing from all of the other panelists, some really unique perspectives. And, I hope we can keep in touch as well and discuss further.
Thank you so much, Amit. Wonderful work. And I mean, your drive and passion for NISA. And we've been in touch for 2 years, last 2-3 years. And then finally we get to do this webinar, and, I get to rub shoulders with Bharati. Bharati, I obviously known her for a while also. And Roshan first time, and Krishank also first time. It's lovely to, rub shoulders with all of you and get all your different perspective on how to reimagine vision, reimagine education in India. If hypothetically we had a clean slate. So it was a wonderful NEP, it was free. You gave us a clean slate to speak our mind. So thank you so much, Amit.
Thanks so much, guys. I mean, I had a fun time. All thanks to Amit. And allowing us to express is a great pleasure, and it's a great privilege as well. Thank you so much. I think we should do this more often.
Great. Thank you very much, guys. And since I get to actually speak one-to-one, and I know there there is a potential to much more to come in this kind of conversation, but at times we take like 1 hour just to warm it up and get into that mode wherein we really want to talk about the wonderful ideas that we have and all. But this is also one of our initiative. We can once again do it more often. And NISAtalk is now going to continue as a series of webinars. So every time we are going to bring more and more people to share their ideas and learning and opportunities and all of it. So thank you very much to all of you. And thank you very much to all our participants, people who participated, also actively questioned. I think it has been 2 hours, and these days no one stays for 2 hours in a webinar. So thank you very much to all of you. And thank you also to the people in the background managing our tech and making sure that things are happening and live stream and everything is happening. Thank you very much. You have a great evening. Enjoy rest of the evening.